Well, good morning to you all, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I very much hope that you, your families, and friends are all remaining safe and well in these difficult times. Now, we're all prisoners of our experience. For the past 4.5 years, I've run Strategia Worldwide, a risk management consultancy, with my business partner, Ian Pickard. But my understanding of leadership in crisis is based on 37 years as a soldier, during which I commanded an or in combat at every level, from junior command of a platoon of about 30 men to a division of about 25,000 men and women. Operations ranged from Northern Ireland, combat as a tank squadron leader in the First Gulf War, Bosnia, Kosovo, Iraq, 2006 and 2007, which was very definitely a combat operation, and in my last job as NATO's Deputy Strategic Commander, Afghanistan, as a member of the Strategic Command Group overseeing the NATO operation. The one unifying factor in this experience is that the need for resilience in crisis underpinned everything. Resilience is the foundation which allows leadership styles and strategy to be adopted for the virtual world we're so dependent on now. I start with the premise that the best way to manage crises is to avoid them, hence the essence of the military approach to crisis management: prevent rather than react. However, on the basis that it is part of the human condition to be caught out by the unexpected, the next best thing is to ensure that an ability to respond to the unexpected is built into the organization. And as with everything, it starts with selecting the right leader. And that means someone who can inspire people to do willingly and well what needs to be done. Don't assume that an ability to lead people comes with the job. You can't someone who has no experience of leadership into a leadership role to succeed. Leaders have to be selected, and they have to be educated and trained to become leaders. No one through the gates of the Royal Military Academy stand being subjected to a rigorous process of selection to test their leadership potential. And thereafter, at every level, leadership ability is tested, judged, and built up through extensive training and education. You don't command at a higher level until you've proved off as a commander at a subordinate level. So what? Invest in leadership, select, train, and educate your leaders of the future. Now, I'm not suggesting your organization should emulate the army, but it's worth recognizing as an institution, it generally gets leadership right because of the ethos of leadership which underpins command, and the immense amount of time, effort, resources that go into selecting, training, and educating leaders right through their careers. Let me highlight a number of areas I think underpin leadership and therefore the ability to respond in a crisis. First, character. Leadership is about who you are and what you are. It's therefore intensely personal. And because we're all different, we all do it differently. You will all have your own list of leadership virtues. Let me list 3. First comes courage for me, because as Churchill said, it is the quality which guarantees all others. Courage defines leadership. In my old world as a soldier, physical courage is the true knightly virtue to which we all aspire, and rightly we expect physical courage from our officers. The courage to take action and lead by example when circumstances demand it. Leadership by example is in so many ways the absolute essence of leadership. But there's also moral courage, the courage to make and stick with difficult decisions, and that applies in any sector. Next comes integrity. You know that few things undermine leadership more than bullshit, spin, or failure to be straight. The last characteristic I'll touch on is robustness, both physical and mental. Mental robustness is all about the determination to think clearly under pressure. It's about making things happen by sheer force of will. It's also about coping when things go wrong and starting again. Don't underestimate physical robustness either. Fitness is fundamental and allows you to operate under pressure. And don't underestimate either the effect on others of a dependable, strong physical presence that emanates confidence, even if it's a virtual presence. Next, morale. As Napoleon said, the moral is to the physical as 3 is to 1. If morale is high, people lead themselves, and they have the resilience to cope when things go wrong. Leaders have to build, maintain, and nurture good morale. And there are 3 aspects to this. First, spiritual, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of a great and noble purpose, the achievement of which is vital. People must feel that what they do contributes to achieving the purpose. Mining is in a strong position here and should be proclaiming the great and noble purpose underpinning the industry. Our civilization, our way of life depends on mining, and mining is critical to fighting that other great existential threat we face, climate change. Next is intellectual. People must believe the purpose is achievable and that they have the necessary capability and resources. They must also feel they belong to an efficient organization. Material is the last of the 3. People must believe that leaders are doing what they can to ensure they're looked after as well as possible. Equipment, working conditions, a fair deal on pay and terms of service. That doesn't mean luxury or perfection. Indeed, sometimes the highest morale can be found where conditions are toughest, because people take working with challenge. However, it does mean getting the logistics as right as possible. Fundamental to maintaining morale is the culture of the team, because it's the team which generates cohesion and gives people the motivation to succeed and the mutual support they need. In a crisis, it's the feel they belong to a band of brothers and sisters which will get you through the challenges you face. Then there's the importance of communication. Leadership needs the ability to connect with people, to communicate. And you can only connect if you understand your people, their needs, their fears, and that you have their interests at heart. It's about EQ, not IQ. This means talking in a way they'll understand and which resonates. You need to know what you're talking about, and you need to mean what you say. Communication in crisis requires calm reassurance, realism, and positive approach that gives people the confidence that things turn out okay. The fundamentals of leadership don't change. What does change is circumstances and the world and the society we live in. That means understanding, taking account of different expectations, and adapting to circumstances. Next, I want to switch tack and talk about rethinking strategy, not only for the current crisis, but to set the conditions for successful emergence from the crisis we're in now. Never in most of our lifetimes has strategic leadership been so much in the spotlight. As our political leadership grapple with decisions over lifting lockdown and risking lives, and how to save an economy in freefall. Now is not the time to second-guess our politicians, but to recognize that to govern is to decide. Suffice it to say, rules or principles of leadership and templates of decision-making do not necessarily serve one well in complex situations where there are no right answers, just limited choices between the least wrong ones. So clarity of thought, vision and adaptability exemplify the strategic leader as much as resolution and determination. Ability to live with ambiguity and uncertainty, and not least, pragmatic capacity to take calculated risk for the longer term and greater benefit, distinguish the successful strategic leader from the tactical operator or manager. Fundamentally, successful emergence from the global pandemic will be about being successful on 2 counts: strategy, how to win a war, and tactics, how to win a battle. And the words of the Chinese strategist Sun Tzu, written around 550 BC, are equally relevant to any strategy designer, whether in politics, business, or the military. Strategy without tactics, he said, is the route to victory. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. Strategy design is, I suggest, best served by think right to left. Start with an analysis of the situation. Where are we now? What are the risks and challenges? What is the center of gravity or source of strength we want to protect? Then work out the destination. Where do we want to get to? Identify and articulate the desired set of circumstances or vision we aspire to. What objectives need to be achieved if that vision is to be unlocked? What are the decisive conditions that need to be established to allow progress along the lines of operation or routes to each objective? What actions and resources need to be applied to generate the outcomes if those types of effects are to be achieved? Finally, how circumstances are changing and how the plan needs to adapt. Now, that's a very simplistic overview, and of course, it's much more complicated than I've portrayed it. But nevertheless, put together, this is a build-up strategic pathway from which you can put together the detailed plans. However, important planning is, don't be fixated on the plan. In order to build resilience against future crises, stay agile, stay adaptable. It was Eisenhower who said it was planning that mattered, not the plan. And another general, von Moltke, who said that no plan survives contact with the enemy. It is planning and persistent reassessment of the external forces at work which gives you the knowledge and understanding from which intuition flows and which allows you to adjust the plan as things change. The more you understand, the greater the agility of decision making. And this is where wargaming comes in. No military commander would launch an operation, assuming there's time, without wargaming the plan against a red team to determine the friction points or risks and where the crisis might strike. Always asking difficult what-if questions. Rigorous wargaming will help identify where this might happen, so you can put together the necessary contingency plans to prevent the worst happening and ensure you have the means to respond when the crisis strikes. This is all about developing the intellectual muscle memory which kicks in when needed. But effectively and really ensure resilience, you need drills and standing operating procedures to ensure that people take action quickly without orders. But these are no good unless regularly practiced and tested. For example, we've been working with a mining company, security and, and crisis management policies and procedures. And one of our recommendations, which they didn't do, the importance of wargaming and practicing the plans. When the COVID crisis struck, not only did they not implement the procedures, but the leader froze, retreated to his office, and refused to communicate directly with his people. On top of that, the company headquartered in a different country put up with that leader's behavior. And there's now a real risk that one bad apple can ruin the very good reputation that company has. 3 lessons come out of this. Number 1, select the right people, test them, and if they don't measure up, be prepared to move them. Number 2, make sure you have a robust succession plan and nominate competent deputies in advance. Leaders may well fall by the wayside, as Boris Johnson has found out. So empowered deputies are critical to resilience and effective crisis management. Excuse me. A successful response to a crisis and resilience depends on what the military call mission command, by which subordinates must be empowered, supported, and resourced, but they must also be accountable. This means trusting the people on the ground to use their initiative. They must understand and be crystal clear about what is to be achieved, and they must also have the resources and support. But this needs trust, and trust takes time to build. In the military world, it comes partly from living, working, training, thinking, and conducting operations together. But it also comes from competence and the confidence that people have in an individual's ability to lead. And this is based on experience, training, and thinking, always underpinned by character and flair. Finally, keep something in reserve. Drilled into every military commander at every stage of his or her training and education is the importance of a reserve. If the reserve is committed, generate another one, however difficult, however small. You know best what sort of reserve you may need to deploy to manage a crisis. And if you want an example of what happens if you don't maintain a reserve, look at the chaos we saw over PPE for our health workers in the UK. For my last word, let me turn to an extraordinary book by an extraordinary man, 7 Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence. He was a man with no formal military training, an explorer, a historian, an archaeologist, and a desert traveler of remarkable endurance. And he led the Arabs during their revolt against the Ottoman Turks in the First World War. You'll all remember Peter O'Toole's portrayal of him in that classic David Lean movie, Lawrence of Arabia. What he said about generalship nails leadership in crisis. Let me quote, "The greatest commander of men was he whose intuitions most nearly happened. 9/10 of tactics was certain enough teachable in schools, but the irrational 10th was like a kingfisher flashing across a pool, and in it lay the test of generals. It could be ensured only by instinct, thought practicing the stroke, until at the crisis it came naturally, a reflex. Of course, the best way to manage a crisis is to prevent it. But when it comes to the crisis, as it surely will, and only through thought practicing the stroke, training for certainty, and educating for the inevitable uncertainty, will Lawrence's irrational 10th flash across the pool like a kingfisher. At the end of the day, crisis management is about building resilience through planning, wargaming, training, educating, and keeping something in reserve. But it is always about leadership." Thank you very much.